Hey everyone, how's it going? Kevin here with Push to Talk, and I just got finished watching night one of the G1 Climax, and it was absolutely insane. From bell to bell, this night one of the G1 was definitely one to remember. It was absolutely incredible. I can't say that enough. I wanted to, sit down and do a little video about my thoughts of night one of the G1 this year. This aired on the 18th, I believe, but I've been pretty busy with work, so I haven't really had a chance to actually sit down and enjoy the whole thing in one go. I was finally able to do just that, and right away, I wanted to sit down here in front of the camera with you all and talk about this thing. So, as you can see, I'm wearing my G1 Climax tournament t-shirt from the G1 29. I actually got to go to night one of the G1 29 in Dallas, Texas. I was really hoping that, in 2021, they'd bring it back to the States, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon now with the pandemic, unfortunately. But luckily for all of us, the G1 airs on New Japan World, and it's on demand for busy folks like me. So let's get into it and talk a little bit about the night one this year. So, opening things up, we had a Young Lion match. It was one of the Young Lions. I can't really remember who it was. He was up against Sho, a heel Bullet Club show, which I find to be a little strange. I don't think I'm a huge fan of heel show, especially in the Bullet Club right now. That's not to say that I don't like Sho. I think Sho is awesome, especially when he was in Roppongi 3K. I really, really enjoy his singles matches a lot as a junior heavyweight. I like how he's one of those bigger junior heavyweight guys, a lot like what Shingo was like when he was a junior heavyweight. I like how he can, throw other little guys around and still have really hard hitting matches. I just think he's better as a babyface. He's really fun to root for. He has a great crowd connection. I've actually seen Sho in person twice now. Once up in San Francisco at Super J Cup, and the other time at oh boy, it was one of the New Japan shows in San Jose at the Civic. It was the last one they did when Liger wrestled his last match in the States. Sho was there as well. And he's awesome. I really like him, but I don't think he's a good fit in Bullet Club. He doesn't really fit the bill. I don't really like his mannerisms very much as a heel. He just doesn't really do it for me. I wish they'd, put him back to being a babyface, but New Japan tends to book things for the long term, so we're probably going to be stuck with heel Sho for a while. That's okay. This match was whatever. I think I'm not going to totally love anything that he does until either he's a babyface again or until, he's able to really step up his game as a heel. But he's still a great in-ring worker, and, this match was cool. But on to the actual G1 tournament. This is where things get crazy, especially in this opening match. Now, before I kind of get into this match, which was Kodebushi versus Yujudo Takahashi, I think I want to talk a little bit about who Kodebushi has become in the G1 Climax tournament. Now, in my opinion, especially over the last couple of years, Kodebushi has kind of become the best G1 Climax storyteller from night one all the way to the final night. The reason I think this is because, the past couple of years, he's always had a really great story that's carried throughout the entire tournament. Like, look at last year, for example. I'm pretty sure that's the one he won. If you take a look at his matches from last year, he does this thing where he kind of wrestles in the same style as all of his opponents. He kind of matches them almost move for move in a lot of ways. I thought this was really impressive then because it played into the fact that he won the thing, right? So it showed, him showing a ton of confidence and a ton of just ambition in the way that he wrestled his matches. And that story carried through all the way to the end when he ultimately won. The year prior to that, G1 Climax 29, the match that I got to see in person when he wrestled Kenta in night one in Dallas. Very early on in the match, he actually screwed up his ankle. And, the story that they told in that year's tournament was that this ankle injury was pretty severe. And in every match of that year's tournament, he was kind of favoring his ankle a little bit. And all of the other wrestlers kind of knew that. So they would go straight for his ankle. And he did a lot to kind of protect and hide the fact that he had an ankle injury. So I thought that was a really good story throughout that tournament. This year, we can kind of see the beginning development of what this story is going to be. And that's especially prevalent in this match with Yujudo. So when you watch this match, and I think even Kevin Kelly says something about it on commentary, Ibushi isn't really in his body language and kind of how he carries himself and how he paces out his moves. He isn't really wrestling from a point of like desperation. It more so seems that he's like wrestling with a lot of anxiety and anxiousness and urgency, which ultimately leads to him making a lot of mistakes. Case in point, he actually lost this match to Yujudo, which, nothing bad on the Tokyo Pimp by any means. He's fantastic, but he's not really what you would call a main event player. And for someone like Kota Ibushi to lose to him, somewhat clean, there was some shenanigans in there, is pretty telling about where Kota Ibushi is going with his character in this year's tournament. I think what's particularly interesting as well is that this loss came straight off the heels of his loss to Tanahashi at Wrestle Grand Slam. I think that's what it's called. I'm probably getting it mixed up with the AEW show this week. But he lost to Tanahashi in the main event in his shot at the U.S. title, which is kind of a flip-flop of what they've done with Tanahashi and Ibushi in the past. But, leading up to that, Ibushi was out for, I think he had a pneumonia or something for a while. So they kind of played into that a little bit about him training to get back to it. I think he's had said in a couple of interviews that, like, this bout with pneumonia was harder than, even dealing with some of the more severe injuries that he's had. So it's interesting to see, that tie into his anxiousness in his matches and kind of diminished confidence that we've been seeing from Ibushi as of late. I'm really curious to see how this story carries out across the remainder of the tournament. I don't think Ibushi is going to win this year. I actually hope he loses quite a bit. Not to say that, I want Ibushi to lose, but I think it would be an interesting development for his character. I mean, it could even be something along the lines of what we saw with Okada a couple of years back when he lost the title to Kenny Omega. If you remember, he went from being the Rainmaker to being this crazy guy that dyed his hair and brought balloons to the ring. Maybe we'll see something out of Ibushi similar to that. I can fantasy book it all day. Maybe it'll play into like some kind of Golden Lovers reuniting or some continuation of Ibushi and Omega. Ibushi has a mental breakdown, so he has to go to AEW. I don't know. That's fantasy booking, but case in point being, Ibushi is probably the best G1 storyteller in recent history. And I'm really excited to see how the rest of the tournament goes for him. So, like I said, Yujudo actually beat Ibushi in this match, which is kind of crazy, but we'll see how it goes. Enough of Ibushi and Yujudo. Let's move into the next match, which was actually a comedy match between Yano and Kenta. Toru Yano is one of my favorite comedy wrestlers, probably of all time. Man, I would love to see him wrestle Orange Cassidy. I don't know if he ever has before, but man, I would absolutely love to see something like that. But Orange Cassidy aside, Kenta is actually a pretty damn good comedy wrestler himself. He's typically, as we know, a heel, pretty straight-laced bad guy who pulls his fair share of shenanigans, especially last year when he had that briefcase. But this match was actually pretty damn hilarious. At the beginning of the match, the ref did the good old pat down of each. Each wrestler actually was hiding a roll of tape in their trunks, Kenta included, which was great. After those were confiscated, the match began. Typical Toru Yano stuff, holding on the ropes and doing all that funny stuff, the yelling at each other. The two eventually battled up the ramp, where Kenta had hid a roll of tape in the stage, and kind of like those steel supports that go up around the entranceway. He had a roll of tape hidden up there, which he snatched and actually taped up Toru Yano with. No, I'm sorry. Yano got the first one away from him. He threw it into the audience, and Kenta had a second one stored. So that was pretty good. So after Yano's tied up, they make their way back down to the ring. A little bit more shenanigans happens. At one point, Kenta rolls a tied up Yano under the ring, which was pretty funny because the commentators were saying like, oh, Yano's afraid of the dark. He's going to freak out under there. The thought of that is pretty hilarious. Kenta rolls back into the ring, prompts the referee to begin the 20 count. Referee's counting. I think he hits about 14 before Yano pops up on the opposite side of the ring, away from Kenta's view. Hits Kenta with a low blow, rolls him up, but Kenta kicks out. I think Yano actually hits him with a second one and pins Kenta for the win. I love it when Yano is able to beat some of these higher profile guys in the G1. I always think it's funny how he plays a spoiler a lot of the time. I mean, in years past, the Yano match is usually like the deciding factor of who goes on to the finals. I just love how he screws people over, and he's just such a big goofball, and he's fucking Toru Yano, man. He's fantastic. After the Yano match, we got into what I thought was going to be the match of the night. As we'll get to, I was a little mistaken about that, but we had Naito versus Zack Saber Jr. I love it when these guys wrestle each other. I think they are the two of the most technically proficient wrestlers in the world, both, on the ground and off the ground. The series of exchanges in submission holds that these two roll each other into have always been fantastic. I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe last year, the Naito and ZSJ match ended up being like the best damn match of the tournament. And I thought this was definitely going to be the case this time. It came really close. It was really good. I loved this match because it shows really the technical prowess of each one of these wrestlers, and these two complement each other so well. I think they bring out the best in each other, and they always put on a stellar bout. So early on in the match, in this one too, looking at my notes, ZSJ hits Naito with a drop kick to the back of Naito's head, which isn't typically something we're going to see out of ZSJ, but and pretty uncharacteristic. But I gotta say, that drop kick was spot on, and it looked pretty brutal. Like, he seemed to really nail Naito. Naito was sitting on the mat, and ZSJ kind of did one of those downward drop kicks to the back of Naito's head. And, I don't know if this is a testament to ZSJ or Naito or both, but the way he took that thing looked absolutely wicked. As with, anytime Naito takes any sort of damage to the back of the head, looks pretty damn brutal. But I made a note of that just because it was something that stood out to me and was something a little unique compared to what we've seen from these two in the past. So the common theme throughout this match was ZSJ going at the knees of Naito. As we know, Naito has bad knees, so that's, of course, ZSJ being ZSJ, the kind of mastermind and ring general, picked apart the weak spot, and he just went for it. So throughout the entire match, he was just hammering on Naito's knees, added a great element to the story. Sure, it's something kind of played out in old school, pick a body part and work it, but they did it really well in this match. There was another spot in this match that I really liked where Naito was kind of ready to take a backbreaker by ZSJ. He was able to escape and work out of it and transition into a DDT, which, is something we've seen plenty of times before. But the way ZSJ took this DDT and the way that he sold it was hilarious, and it looked amazing and painful. He took it right on the top of his head. He just bounced right out of it. It reminded me a lot of how Kenny Omega will take, and Kota Ibushi will take a lot of their DDTs, where they just kind of land on the top of their head and they just bounce afterwards. And man, in this DDT did CSJ bounce, man. It was crazy. Dude flew halfway across the ring. It looked great. Again, not something we typically see at a ZSJ, which, you know, I was happy to see. I mean, hell, even thinking like the physique of ZSJ recently, especially in this match, he seems to have added a little bit more mass and definition. He doesn't look as lanky as he used to. So I'm glad he's kind of changing things up a little bit, but still remaining the good old, you know, ring general, grappling master that he always has been. There was, let's see here, another point in this match where Naito went to hit a Destino, but because ZSJ was hammering on those knees, you know, it kind of ended up being a really awkward and sloppy, not fully impactful Destino. In the middle of that move, Naito's knees gave out. Thought that was great. It played right into the story. Towards the end of the match, they were on the ground again, grappling. ZSJ was actually able to kind of contort Naito into this crazy looking, I think it was an Indian deathlock. He had him in an absolute pretzel, and he held this thing for a good amount of time. You know, typically ZSJ will move from submission to submission to submission fairly rapidly. You know, watching him is kind of like watching an octopus open up a shell or something. He just kind of contorts and moves around. But he actually held Naito in this submission for a minute, which ultimately led to Naito tapping out and submitting. So winner of this match, Tetsuya or ZSJ. I really thought this was an awesome match. I fully expected this to be one of the best matches of the tournament, and I think it will be. But I do not think it was the best match of the entire night. That match is reserved for Tomohiro Ishii versus Shingo Takagi. Man, that match was absolutely insane. So before I get into it, and I wrote a lot of notes on this match, you know, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about Ishii and Takagi. I think, you know, I can confidently say they're probably my top two favorite wrestlers in New Japan right now. I would go as far as to say that Shingo Takagi, he might be my second favorite wrestler in kind of the modern era of pro wrestling, right after Kenny Omega. I think these guys are the absolute pinnacle and masters of Japanese strong style. They're so evenly built. They're so evenly matched. They both have great psychology that when you pair these two together, you know you are going to have something special. And I think this opening night of the G1 match between the two might be the best match that they've ever had with one another. It was absolutely fantastic. It was hard hitting. It was tons of drama. It was fantastic storytelling, especially when it comes to the fighting spirit, as we know these style of matches usually typically tell. I absolutely love this thing. I highly recommend that you go out of your way to watch this, even if it's the only match you watch of the G1. I predict maybe this is the one to watch. I mean, I think we'll see by the end of this thing, but I think this might be the best one of the G1. I hope I'm wrong, but it was fantastic. So getting into the actual match, these guys wasted no time. Right out of the gate, it was meat slapping right away. It was shoulder blocks straight into each other. Really hard, impactful shoulder blocks too. Like, you know, the kind where you hear it actually slap when they shoulder block into each other. It was one of those. It looked absolutely brutal. I couldn't imagine taking a shoulder block from either one of these guys. It would probably cave my chest in and I would die. But after these fantastic meat slapping moments, you know, we went into your typical forearm exchange and trash talking, which is classic New Japan. You know, between these forearm exchanges as well as the shoulder blocks, this was some extremely high impact stuff. I mean, this was strong style personified. It was a showcase of what that style of wrestling is all about. And it's at the same time too exactly what you would expect from these guys. I mean, Shingo and Ishii are masters of what they do, and you put them together and magic happens. So after some meat slapping and forearm exchanges, the guys spill out onto the floor where things slow down a little bit until Ishii hit an absolutely wicked power slam on the floor. I could just see Shingo's insides ready to pop out of him once he hit that concrete. When Ishii actually grabbed him and went to turn him over, that dude had like a half a second of hang time in the middle of that power slam. It was executed beautifully with perfection, and it looked like it really hurt. It had to have taken the wind out of Takagi. It was fantastic. So guys are back in the ring, and Ishii is just laying into Shingo after that power slam on the floor. He is hitting him with absolutely brutal chops. It was the kind of chops that you see from Ishii that not only do you hear the slap of the flesh, but you hear a deep, hard thud of that, hand and forearm pounding into the chest of his opponent. Like really just hollow, hard-hitting slap and thud, and it just echoes throughout that arena. Typical amazing Ishii stuff. Once he is done kind of laying into Shingo, Shingo actually starts to pick up steam himself after he's able to hit his signature right-hand punch, the one that he does, that straight right, pow, right in the sucker of Ishii, followed up with a DDT, and now the tides have turned, and the bout is now in the favor of Shingo. From there, Shingo starts hitting his typical super explosive Shingo offense. He is hitting with speed. He is hitting with power. He is going all out. He hits that awesome senton that he does, bouncing off the ropes as well. Dude is just on fire at this point, almost kind of seemingly out of nowhere. From there, we have the offense is kind of continuing from Shingo onto Ishii until we get that classic moment where Ishii's had enough and he just pops up off the floor saying, "Give me more, let's go." The fighting spirit has been reinvigorated within Ishii, and he is ready to throw down. So after that classic Ishii pop-up, he goes into that kind of crazy state where he just wants more and more punishment. He's showing his opponent in the crowd how much he can take, and every time he takes a shot, he dishes it right back into Shingo. Typical Japanese strong style stuff here. There's a point where Ishii, he begins to wear down Takagi, throws him in the corner, and he hits that classic Ishii forearm chop combination, the one that I'm talking about, where he kind of hits him with the forearm, hits him with the chop, back and forth until his opponent, and Shingo in this case, slides down the corner of the ring. And I must say, this has got to be one of the hardest I've seen Ishii hit this particular combo. I mean, he's hit it really hard in the past, but man, he was absolutely laying into Shingo. Either he was really, really hitting him for real, which I think is what was happening, or that dude is just that good. Once Takagi is actually able to get out of the corner and answer with his own kind of pop-up, give me more moment, Takagi is able to put down Ishii with a number of strikes. Ishii hits the mat, and boom, the 10 minutes pass call hits right as Ishii hits the mat. This is something that I really love in New Japan when they count out the time remaining, especially in these big G1 matches, and when the wrestlers are able to time it so perfectly with the flow of the match. And that's something that these guys did with absolute perfection this time around, as I'll get to it later in. So this was the first example of that. 10 minutes passed, Ishii hits the floor, and this suspense and the drama just kind of continues to build from there. At some point, Ishii is back in the corner, and Takagi is absolutely laying into him. As you can tell, this is a pretty common theme in this match, is just the hard-hitting brutality. And laying into him so hard that Ishii eventually falls out of the corner, hits the mat. Shingo hops right up onto the top rope, boom, hits him with an elbow, and the crowd pops. It was a great little moment. Shingo hits all of his moves, even something like a simple elbow off the top, with such explosiveness that it always looks good. From there, Ishii is up, and the guys go into a series of reversals, as we typically see in a lot of New Japan matches. And those reversals are actually punctuated with exchanged vertical suplexes. First, I think Takagi hits his first, and then Ishii follows up with another one, just kind of answering each other, showing one another, hey, I'm as bad as you, I'm as strong as you, showing the audience that we are evenly matched, and this is not something that you're going to want to blink during. Once we are done with this kind of exchanging dual vertical suplex action, we get some more reversals from one another, dodging each other's finishes, dodging waist locks, kind of just being slippery with one another, which is, a common thing, like I said, in these New Japan matches, especially with these guys. Until we get to a point where these dudes are just throwing exchanged side suplexes at one another. And they are hitting them really, really hard. Like, first, boom, Shingo hits one. Boom, Ishii answers with another one. Boom, Shingo answers with hits another one. Then boom, Ishii throws Shingo into the ropes. Shingo bounces, comes back to Ishii. Ishii nails him with another side suplex. Boom, Shingo's back up, meets Ishii, and then with Ishii on the floor sitting up, slides into him with that sliding lariat, and thus kind of ends that nice little sequence there. I thought the sequence was fantastic. Again, kind of playing into the idea of the entire match, which is the one-upsmanship of two very evenly matched competitors. Two very bull-headed, determined, and strong competitors at that. The match builds from there. Eventually, we find both men on the top rope, and Shingo nails Ishii with a massive superplex. Both guys just absolutely the mat, and it looks great. Shingo goes for a pin. Near fall, Ishii kicks out. As soon as he kicks out, here we are again, the 15 minutes pass call. This was all timed perfectly. Again, I love the time calls and how they build into the suspense of the match. I loved this so much. From there, Ishii fights back, gets Shingo in the corner, and kind of akin to what we saw earlier with these back and forth exchanges of moves, Ishii tries to hit Shingo with a superplex of his own, but at this point, these guys are absolutely gassed. They are exhausted. Ishii can't muster the strength to fully get Shingo up and over for the suplex. They both kind of awkwardly fall, but Ishii, being the determined, bull-headed, competitive fighter that he is able to get Shingo back up onto the top, finally nails him with that superplex, and answers the call. The match then continues to build even more from there, back to exchanges of chops, of forearm blows, and then boom, kind of seemingly out of nowhere, Takagi hits Made in Japan, goes for the cover, Ishii kicks out, and guess what happens? 20 minutes pass. So they're really playing into the time limit extremely, extremely well here. The drama just continues to escalate with each moment. It's funny looking at my match here, or my notes here. For some reason, I wrote this match has massive lariats that are absolutely insane. And thinking back on it, that is absolutely the case. These guys, like, in addition to the chops and the forearm strikes and the shoulder blocks, they're hitting absolutely gnarly and massive lariats on one another. The kind where, they don't fall when they hit each other, they just slam into each other. Sure, they fall a few times, but man, it is full impact, meat slapping Japanese strong style at its finest here. There's even a point where Ishii hits a crucifix bomb on Shingo. Another thing from my notes that I thought was like kind of cool. Not something we typically see out of Ishii or any guy of his kind of build. So that was neat to see. And he nailed it. So towards the end of the match, Shingo hits this pumping bomber that literally takes the air out of the arena. Like, this thing had to have been one of the hardest hitting, most intense pumping bombers that I've ever seen out of Shingo. He hit this thing, and all you hear, in addition to the slap and the thud, is an audible gasp throughout the entire audience, followed by silence. Like, I think people in attendance were shocked by how hard hitting that pumping bomber was. I love that move. It's got to be one of my favorite moves that Shingo pulls off. It's simple, but man, the way he hits it is with absolute perfection every single time. And man, if I ever did like a top 10 pumping bombers from Shingo video list, this might be number 1 or number 2. This thing was absolutely nuts. So in the last minutes of the match, Ishii finally hits these chops to the throat that Ishii is kind of known for. Throughout the match, it seemed like he was kind of holding back on hitting these chops to the throat, kind of using them for a ditch effort type of thing, because now at this point in the match, we are minutes left. So he finally goes to those chops to the throat. I think even Kevin Kelly on commentary says something about like, hey, there he goes, finally going for those chops to the throat. Obviously referee, Red Shoes tries to stop him because you can't be hitting dudes in the throat. And he backs off a little bit. And that's something also I want to touch on as well that I thought was really cool in this match. The chops that Ishii was hitting, and also being like a testament to how good Kevin Kelly is on commentary, how he talks about Ishii's hand starting to swell and become larger as he continues to hit these chops. I thought that was something really cool. I thought that was a really cool little detail, both on Kevin Kelly's part and on Ishii's part. So the chops to the throat, those weren't enough to take Shingo down. So they move into just wailing each other with headbutts. And I mean headbutting each other. Not like head to head, but as they do head to kind of jaw. They looked really stiff. They were really wailing on each other. I think these may have been some of the stiffest shots of the match, these headbutts. They looked pretty and also pretty darn brutal. But alas, the headbutts still not enough to take down Shingo. With just moments left in the match, Shingo busts out Last of the Dragon for the 1, 2, 3. Shingo, the IWGP champion, picks up the win and closes out night 1 of the G1 Climax tournament as the winner. So after watching this G1, finally this episode, I had to sit down and record an episode about it, specifically or mainly because of this match in particular. I loved it, man. I love Japanese strong style. I think it's my favorite style of pro wrestling, hands down. I love Shingo Takagi. I think he's probably the best in-ring performer of this generation as far as moveset goes, intensity goes, facial expressions, drama, psychology. I would like to see a modern day heel Kenny Omega wrestle against Shingo. They're my top 2 favorite guys in wrestling, and I just want more of this. I can't wait to watch more of the G1. I think night 2, which is actually on demand right now, I think the main event is Okada and Tanahashi, which is a rematch of what I saw in Dallas in person for G1 29. But I don't think I'm going to do a recap of every G1 night this year. I do have a life after all, and I would still like to do, some Dynamite recaps and Rampage recaps as well. But I'm definitely going to watch the entire thing. Maybe if there's a match in there that stands out to me, or a particular night of the G1 that stands out to me, I'll record a video. I'll probably do the finale as well, just to kind of put a bookend on the G1. But you'll probably expect to see those pretty sporadically. So apologies, but at the same time, hey, I've got a job that I got to do. But anyway, thanks for watching. Stay tuned tomorrow night, guys. Don't forget to watch that massive episode of Dynamite. We got Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson in the main event. That is a dream match. I can't believe it's happening, and I can't believe it's happening on regular TV. It's almost like Hogan versus Goldberg back in the day on an episode of Nitro. But even better, because these guys are just world class. So I'll do a recap of that for sure. I wanted to save my first Dynamite recap for a big episode of Dynamite, and what better episode than Dynamite Grand Slam. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Shout me out in the comments. I don't know if anyone even is going to watch this, but it's fun talking just to the camera and to, my potentially non-existent audience. But hey, if you do leave a comment, I'll shoot the SHIT with you. And we can chat a little bit. So again, thanks for watching, and I really appreciate spending this time with me.